Okay, good afternoon. Are both sides ready to proceed to trial?
The plaintiff
Yes, Your
is, Your
Honor.
Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Is there any need to provide the scoring panelists with the trial roster and teams codes, or is that already taken care of by technology?
They have that information, Your Honor.
Okay. Okay, I just need to inform the teams as well as anyone in the gallery that the Colorado Bar Association may be taking photographs of the competition during this round, and that team participation in the state tournament grants automatic permission and the use of these photos by the Colorado Bar Association. I want to remind each team that there are no recesses allowed, with the exception of those granted for a health emergency, and especially not between the end of witness examination and the beginning of closing arguments. I'm going to ask each scoring panelist. We've already gone over conflicts. Any conflicts in this competition will be resolved per the rules of this competition. Could each side introduce themselves?
Yes, Your Honor.
I don't think we can hear you, Attorney McKenzie.
We've been having some technical issues with the computer. If she can introduce herself for mine, if that will be all right with you.
Sure.
Okay.
It's nice to see collegiality among members of the bar.
Can everyone hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Hello, Your Honor, and members of the jury scoring panelist. My name is Mackenzie Dana, and I will be conducting the opening statement. I will also be conducting the direct examination of Carson Durst and the cross-examination of Skylar Weirs.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, and members of the jury. My name is Kyle Branson. I will be conducting the direct examination of Dr. Casey Rogers and the cross-examination of Dr. Devin Williams.
Welcome. I'm going to now swear in the team members. Team members, please raise your right hands. Is that everyone?
Your Honor, would you like our team to also swear in at this time?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
All team members, please. Okay, team members, do you promise that the presentation you're about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition?
I do.
Please unmute yourself and verbally answer.
I do.
I do.
Yes, Your Honor.
I do.
Yes, Your Honor.
Great. And did that include all the witnesses as well? Okay, so
We're here.
great. I'm going to move on to the scoring panelists. Scoring panelists, please raise your right hands and turn on your cameras. Okay, we have three. Do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and as objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition?
I do.
Yes, I do. Yes.
Thank you very much. All right. Is the first team ready to proceed?
Your Honor, did the teams finish introducing themselves?
I'll ask the, no, go ahead. So yeah, if anyone hasn't introduced themselves yet, please go ahead.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Your Honor. My name is Emily Bell, and I will be conducting the direct examination of Ms. Dakota Weirs, the cross-examination of Blake Doncourt, and I will be conducting the closing statement as well. My pronouns are she, her.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that needs to introduce themselves?
Good evening, Your Honor. My name is Sam Genzer, and I'm going to be pursuing the role of Dakota Weirs, and my pronouns are she, her.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. Sorry, just a second. Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Sarah Chaman. I will be assuming the role of Carson Durst. My pronouns are they, them.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Cecina Abraha, and I will be assuming the role of Dr. Casey Rogers.
Welcome.
Hello, Your Honor, and members of the jury. For the defense, I will be the first defense attorney. I will be conducting the cross-examination of Carson Durst, the direct examination of Blake Doncourt, and also the closing statement.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. I'm Lola Cheney. I will be crossing Dakota Weirs and directing Skylar Weirs.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Jack Nauman. I will be directing Dr. Devin Williams, crossing Carson Durst, and providing the opening statement.
Welcome as well.
Good afternoon. I'm Juliet Jensen, and I will be portraying Blake Doncourt.
Welcome.
Good afternoon, Your Honor. My name is Danielle Jensen, and I will be playing Dr. Devin Williams for the Andy team.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon. I am Sophie Harrison, and I will be portraying Skylar Weirs.
Welcome.
And Your Honor, one last thing, I apologize. I will actually be crossing Casey Rogers, not Carson Durst.
Noted.
Judge, so it looks like the technical difficulties on behalf of Mackenzie Dana's computer are not going away. I was wondering if it'd be okay for her to compete for mine.
Sure.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Is there any other matters we need to consider before starting the trial?
Yes, Your Honor, a few preliminary matters, if you don't mind.
Okay, go ahead.
Your Honor, first preliminary matter is to assume that everyone in the court here today has a copy of the exhibits and can refer to them directly instead of screen sharing them.
Sure.
Thank you, Your Honor. Our second preliminary matter is for everyone to either sit or stand depending on their comfort level or their ability at this trial.
That's absolutely fine. With Zoom, it's not going to make much of a difference. So everyone should be as comfortable, and I'll assume you all will observe the decorum rules that you need to.
Thank you, Your Honor. And our final preliminary matter is for any time not used on the initial closing statement on behalf of the plaintiff to be used for a rebuttal statement after the defense's closing.
Yeah, granted.
Thank you, Your Honor. That is all for preliminary matters on behalf of the plaintiff.
Thank you.
Your Honor, the defense asks that the judge and the jury be aware of the stipulated facts, that the signatures on the paperwork are valid, and that the chain of custody is not in dispute.
Noted.
That is all.
Great. I think we're ready to begin.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Your Honor, would you
Yes.
like to begin with the opening statements?
Please go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. We are here today to establish truth, and in doing so, justice. We are here today to ensure that no powerful entity can take advantage of any individual for personal gain. We are here today to ensure justice for Miss Dakota Weirs, a victim of negligence. Miss Weirs suffers from non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, an incurable disease that has wreaked havoc on her lifestyle. Yet, she wasn't always a victim. Miss Weirs' life was blossoming before her illness. She was an active member of her community, serving at the local homeless shelter and excelling in her class. Miss Weirs worked as a landscaping technician for years, earning money to pay for her big dreams. Her biggest passion, playing the piano, connected her to her late grandfather who had taught her the instrument. This talent also opened up numerous doors for her. Her future looked bright and her dreams within her grasp. Miss Weirs was reaching new heights until her newly diagnosed disease overshadowed her life and ripped apart her passions and opportunities, tearing her roots out from under her. Our gifted friend could barely help around the house, rendering her incapable of giving back to her community and achieving her same academic and extracurricular standards. Tragically, Miss Weir's bright future was suddenly clouded. Unable to sit at a piano for long periods of time due to pain, fatigue, bruising, and more, she lost her remaining connection to her grandfather and her bright future as a Juilliard pianist. Our young flower was cut down before her prime, withered and crestfallen. It is our job, our duty, to gain compensation for the damage done to Miss Weir's life. To gain recompense for Miss Weirs, we must seek out those responsible. The multi-million-dollar company Lush Fertilizer. Miss Weirs worked closely with Lush Fertilizer for many years. She was unaware of the potential dangers of the fertilizer and protected herself the same as many of her coworkers. The main component of this fertilizer, Drufo, both set the company apart from its competitors and set the stage for Miss Weir's health complications. We will prove, by a preponderance of evidence, that the company Lush Fertilizer is responsible for Miss Weir's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. To do so, we will prove 4 key elements: that Lush made a dangerous product, that Lush was negligent in issuing reasonable caution, that the reasonable plaintiff used this product, and that the plaintiff is now suffering damages caused by Lush. To establish these elements, 3 witnesses will be called on behalf of the plaintiff. First, you will hear from Dr. Casey Rogers. Dr. Rogers has an impressive educational and professional background and has also researched and done experiments on the effects of Drufo for many years. She will provide undeniable evidence that Drufo is a dangerous carcinogen that does cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Next, you will hear from Carson Durst. Mix Durst has a bachelor's in chemical engineering and is a former employee of Lush Fertilizer. They will provide irrefutable evidence that Lush Fertilizer took steps to conceal research pointing towards the dangers of their namesake product. Finally, you will hear from Dakota Weirs. Dakota is the heroine of our story, bravely fighting this cancer caused by exposure to Drufo. She will lay out her work history, how she came to suspect Lush Fertilizer and Drufo, and provide evidence that Lush Fertilizer, through their negligence, failed to warn customers about potential hazards. The defense will call 3 other witnesses: the CEO of the large company, Blake Doncourt, who was in line for a pretentious award only to be knocked out of the running because of this lawsuit. You will then hear from Dakota Weir's twin, her only sibling, Skylar Weirs, known for their journalistic career surrounding flat earth theory, chemtrails, anti-vax culture, and Drufo. Lastly, Dr. Devin Williams, a paid employee of Lush Fertilizer who had the single responsibility of ensuring that Drufo was not carcinogenic. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, it is imperative that you look at the facts as they are presented to you. Lush Fertilizer planted the poison that would devastate and destroy Miss Weir's life. The plaintiff will lay out the hard facts of the case, proving that Lush Fertilizer is responsible for the suffering experienced constantly by Miss Weirs. In the process, we will also prove the defense's case to be weak and rootless. Studies confirm the potential cancer-causing characteristics of Drufo, and evidence proves that upper management at Lush Fertilizer blatantly ignored these warnings. The evidence alone proves the clear negligence displayed by the wealthy company. Members of the jury, we must not allow such disregard for human suffering to go uncorrected. Emotional stress, inconvenience, and emotional damages have overshadowed Miss Weir's life, and it is our duty to offer compensation for it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Your Honor, may I proceed?
Go right ahead.
Lush's warnings were thrown to the wind. Dakota Weirs has sued Lush Fertilizer, saying that their products, specifically Drufo, gave him non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Dakota Weirs will claim that Lush Fertilizer was negligent. However, they will tell you that during their time as a landscaper, it sometimes became a little bit too hot outside, and Dakota liked to feel the breeze against their face and skin. Dakota Weirs will tell you that despite the warnings on the packages and the warnings from his boss, she did not wear a face covering or even a long sleeve shirt or gloves. Why? Because it was a little bit too hot outside. She was uncomfortable. And the company she worked for, Haven Landscaping, who is responsible for the health of their employees, never enforced the safety policies blatantly stated on the packages. And where are they today? Not here, not defending their actions or the lack thereof in court. Years later, Dakota Weirs was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And while laying on the couch one afternoon, Dakota saw something on his TV for an ad for a law firm saying that out of all the fertilizers that Dakota Weirs and other landscapers had used, Drufo, a bonding agent used in Lush Fertilizers products, may potentially cause lymphoma. So, despite the fact that Dakota Weirs had used many other fertilizers with many other dangerous chemicals, all without proper safety equipment, she decided to sue Lush Fertilizer for all of the damages. Any reasonable person would have worn the proper protective gear, even if it was too hot outside. Caution, hazards, causes irritation, wear proper protective clothing. All warnings that, as you will see today, were thrown to the wind by Dakota Weirs and by his employer in the landscaping business, Haven Landscaping. First, Dakota Weirs will tell you how Drufo is outlawed in the EU and other areas. However, this argument will quickly be refuted by the defense's last witness, Dr. Devin Williams, as she explains the reasoning behind Drufo being banned. Dakota Weirs will tell you that she did everything with her twin, Skylar Weirs, except for landscaping, and Skylar Weirs never got lymphoma. However, she will forget that she used hundreds of other harmful chemicals, but she will not tell you that she used hundreds of other harmful chemicals, again, without any protective gear during her work as a landscaper. The plaintiff will try to discredit Skylar Weirs, saying that she has personal issues, saying that she is a gambler. However, these issues would be negated if Dakota Weirs were to win this lawsuit and a huge amount of money that comes with it. Yet, Skylar Weirs will fight for what is right and will testify against Dakota Weirs here today. The plaintiff will bring forward Carson Durst, a prior employee of Lush Fertilizer, who was fired due to their lack of a strong work ethic and their entitled attitude. But where do they work now? At Terra's Greenery, one of the biggest competitors to Lush Fertilizer. And what is Carson Durst's job there? Carson Durst oversees the development of Terra's Greenery's fertilizer, Terra's Greenery's competitor to Lush's best-selling product. So, naturally, Carson Durst would take every opportunity to tear down their competition. Then they will tell you about their study on rats. Carson Durst found a singular study on rats, but not one report on Drufo's effect on humans. For their final witness, the plaintiff will bring Dr. Casey Rogers forward. Dr. Rogers will lead you through their unpublished, unrepeated studies in an attempt to persuade you that Drufo does in fact cause lymphoma. Then the defense will call Blake Doncourt to the stand. The CEO of Lush Fertilizer will reinforce that Dakota used many fertilizers during her days as a landscaper, and in every instance through Lush's carefully labeled and carefully thought out warnings to the wind. However, she will also say that she doesn't even blame Dakota Weirs for the lawsuit, that she blames the money-hungry lawyers behind it. She will give background on Carson Durst, saying that their complaints about Drufo only arose when they climbed the ranks at Terrace Greenery, because it was in fact their job to prove any dangers in Drufo during its development process, and during that process, Carson found none. She will also provide evidence for why Lush Fertilizer does not bake any of its chemicals. After Ms. Doncourt's testimony, the defendant will bring forth Skylar Weirs. She will tell of her extensive research, and despite the fact that she and her twin are having financial difficulties, she would rather fight for what is right. Finally, Dr. Devin Williams, a scientist with multiple publications and degrees, will take the stand. She will tell you about the importance of Drufo and why it was created and why the EU and other countries banned it. We are all sorry that Dakota Weirs has been diagnosed with lymphoma, and we wish him the swiftest recovery. However, as stated in the jury instructions, you cannot be influenced by sympathy, and you will see today that it cannot be proven that Drufo caused Dakota Weirs cancer and that Dakota Weirs did blatantly throw Lush's warnings to the wind. Thank you.
You're welcome. Is the plaintiff ready to present their case in chief?
Apologies, Your Honor. Emily Bell is having some technical issues now. She'll be back in just a moment. If you could give us just a few 30 seconds or so.
Take your time.
Hey, Your Honor. While Emily works on those issues, the plaintiff will call Dr. Casey Rogers to the stand.
Please do so.
May I proceed with the direct examination, Your Honor?
Yeah, as long as the witness remembers that they are under oath.
Perfect. Good afternoon, doctor, members of the jury, and esteemed judge. My name is Kyle Branson, and I will be conducting your direct examination. Could you please state your name, spelling the last for the record?
Yes, my name is Dr. Casey Rogers, Rogers.
And doctor, what brings you to the courthouse today?
I was contacted by the prosecution to testify on behalf of the plaintiff and offer my expertise.
And is there anywhere we can see your qualifications?
Yes, I've provided the court with my curriculum vitae.
Your Honor, let the record reflect that I'm directing my co-counsel to post Exhibit 6 for identification.
So noted.
Co-counsel, could you please post Exhibit 6? Exhibit 6, please, co-counsel. Oh. Apologies. Co-counsel still having technological issues, Your Honor. May we just, can I ask if everyone has a copy of Exhibit 6 in front of them? Can they direct it to themselves?
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. And doctor, is what you're looking at your resume?
Yes.
And what's included in this document?
It is a comprehensive list of my qualifications.
Is it fair and accurate to the best of your knowledge?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I believe sufficient foundation has been laid and I move to have Exhibit 6 entered into evidence.
Granted.
Dr. Rogers, it seems that your curriculum is quite extensive. Would you care to explain your qualifications to the jury?
Yeah, of course. I'm currently a professor of horticulture and entomology at the University of California, Berkeley, which is also where I received my PhD in the same field. I also received a bachelor's in science degree in agriculture and chemistry from Colorado State University.
And for clarity, could you explain what horticulture and entomology are?
Yes, of course. Horticulture focuses on the scientific processes that go into cultivating and maintaining gardens, greenhouses, and so on, whereas entomology is the study of insects.
And given this background, do you have any experience studying the effects of different chemicals used in agriculture on humans?
Yes, I've studied the prolonged effects of chemicals on the human body for years.
Very impressive, doctor. Do you have any experience studying in the field?
Yes, I conducted many studies myself related to chemicals in the field, which have both been published and used as litigation in administrative advisory boards.
And where can we see all these studies?
I have a list of all of my published studies in Exhibit 7.
Your Honor, may I direct everyone to please look at Exhibit 7?
You may.
Doctor, this is a list of your publications.
Yes.
And which of your following publications pertain to this case?
I conducted a study on the ill effects of human exposure to drupa.
And is the list fair and accurate to the best of your knowledge?
Yes.
Your Honor, I believe sufficient foundation has been laid and I move to have Exhibit 7 entered into evidence.
Granted.
Moving on, let's discuss this study, doctor. Could you tell me how you conducted it?
Yeah, I put together 3 treatment groups. One is a control group with no contact to drufo, one with occasional contact to drufo, and those with regular exposure.
Please continue.
I then tracked these groups over the course of years after exposure and tracked various health conditions of all groups. Then the 2 groups with exposure were compared to the control group.
Your Honor, I believe that sufficient foundation has been laid to qualify Dr. Rogers to offer expert testimony relating to agriculture and toxicology.
I agree.
Moving on, doctor, let's finish. What were the results of your study?
The study found that groups with exposure to drufo experienced alarmingly higher rates of health conditions than the control group, specifically cancer, including non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Anything else, doctor?
The study also found that serious health conditions increased proportionally with more exposure to Drufo. The groups with occasional exposure were 5 times more likely to experience severe health problems than the control group. And the group
And
with
to reiterate, in your expert opinion, what do those results illustrate, doctor?
Objection, lay opinion.
Can you?
Sorry, I
so-
didn't hear the objection. Could you please explain the objection, or could opposing counsel please repeat their objection?
Yes, I objected to lay opinion.
And yes, your rebuttal.
Your Honor, I believe that Your Honor, I believe that Dr. Casey Rogers, being qualified in toxicology, this is a study done that relates completely to toxicology. It's a study on Drufo and its effects on humans. And given that she conducted the study, I believe that she can answer this question.
I'm going to overrule the objection.
Thank you. Doctor, would you like me to restate the question?
Yes, please.
And in your expert opinion, doctor, what do the results of your study illustrate?
The results of my study illustrate a strong correlation between Drufo and cancer, including non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
And based on your findings, what conclusions would you draw about someone who had been exposed to Drufo for many years, like the plaintiff, Dakota Weirs?
Well, I could conclude that she would have a much higher rate of developing severe health conditions due to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, including non.
Objection, lay opinion. I believe Dr. Casey Rogers has not been entered in as an expert yet.
I'm going to overrule that. She was qualified, and I took that as being part of what the plaintiff's attorney was asking for.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you like me to repeat the question?
If the witness needs to.
Doctor, to conclude, what conclusions would you draw about someone who had been exposed to Drufo for many years, like the plaintiff, Dakota Weirs?
I could conclude that she would have a much higher rate of developing serious health conditions, including non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, due to Drufo.
That will be all, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers, when dealing with fertilizer of any kind, proper protection should be used?
Probably, yeah.
This proper protection would include a face mask,
I would say so.
long sleeves,
Yes.
long pants,
Yes.
gloves.
Yes.
When dealing with specifically lush fertilizer, this same protection is recommended.
Well, on the package, it is only recommended, and since it is not required, it makes sense that somebody wouldn't.
And the protection is clearly stated on the package for lush fertilizer.
Objection, Your Honor, lack of foundation.
Can you, I'm going to allow it.
All right, now let's talk about your personal experiment, Dr. Rogers. There were 3 testing groups.
Yes, there were.
The first was a control group,
Yes,
which was never exposed to Drufo.
that is correct. Yes.
The second that was occasionally exposed to Drufo.
Yep.
And the third that was frequently exposed.
Yes.
The third group was mostly made up of farmers.
Well, farm laborers and gardeners.
Who may have been exposed to other pesticides.
Probably, but I wasn't looking at other fertilizers. I'm looking at Drufo and how that impacted them.
These fertilizers was not solely Drufo.
I wouldn't be sure. I'm looking at Drufo. That's what I was doing.
The overwhelming outcome of this study was that the third group had an increase in serious health conditions.
Yes, because of the Drufo in the lush fertilizer.
But the gardeners and farmers were presumably using other fertilizers.
I wouldn't know.
The overwhelming outcome was namely cancer.
Well, severe health conditions, including cancer. Yeah,
And specifically non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
it was a part of them. Yes.
The same condition the plaintiff in this case suffers from.
Yes.
And finally, are the results of your experiment published?
No, they're not.
Is the experiment provided for the case in any exhibit?
No, it isn't. I'm here to testify to it anyway.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, a brief redirect. Quickly, Doctor, just to clarify for the jury, in your list of publications, the study on Drufo that we have been discussing here today is in that list of publications, correct?
Yes, it is.
So then it would have been published.
Yes, it was. Sorry.
Thank you. That would be all here.
Objection leading question.
I think it was not timely, so I'm going to let you address that on recross if you want to.
I will have no recross, Your Honor.
Any reason why we cannot excuse this witness? Okay.
No,
I'll
Your
let the plaintiff call their next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Carson Durst to the stand.
Just reminding all witnesses that you've already been sworn.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Ms. Durst. Please state your name and spell it out for the record.
Carson Durst, D-U-R-S-T.
I'll begin your direct examination now, if you're ready. Tell us a little about yourself.
Well, I am the lead product developer for Terra's Greenery since 2006 and currently the head of the research and development team. As the head of R&D, I oversee the development of safe fertilizers and lawn enhancement products.
What does your educational background look like?
I received a bachelor's in chemical engineering at Arizona State University in 2003.
How did you begin your career in the fertilizer industry?
Shortly after graduating, I was hired by Lush Fertilizer as an intern for the product development team in June of 2003. Positions like that are nearly impossible to get out of college with no experience, but I was lucky to have a few connections.
And what connections were those?
The CEO of Lush Fertilizer, Blake Doncourt, was the parent of my childhood best friend, Charles Doncourt. As a result, I was very close to the family growing up. Charles informed me that Lush Fertilizer was hiring interns for the summer, so I applied.
How did your connection with Blake Doncourt affect your work in his company?
My connection with Blake Doncourt certainly opened up the opportunity for me. However, it was through my own hard work and expertise that I earned my position as product development engineer.
I'd now like to focus more on your experience with Drufo while working for Lush Fertilizer. What was your main assignment at Lush Fertilizer?
I was assigned to help research the effects of Drufo, the bonding agent that Lush developed to keep fertilizer products preserved and intact.
How did you help in the development of Drufo?
Drufo began its development in 2001. So by the time that I got there in 2003, the company was testing the safety of the chemical. I was tasked with researching one of the chemical compounds that comprised Drufo and recording my analysis on the compound in my notebook.
Your Honor, I'm now going to refer the witness to Exhibit 3. Let the record reflect that we are looking at our own copies of Exhibit 3.
So noted.
Thank you. Ms. Durst, do you recognize this?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
It's a study from England concluding that a certain chemical compound was carcinogenic in rats.
How are you related to the study?
Objection.
I found the study.
Your Honor, I am laying foundation to enter this exhibit into evidence. However, if you would like, I can respond to the hearsay objection now.
Go ahead.
Your Honor, Ms. Durst was employed to research and file studies on the effects of Drufo. This study report was filed as a part of Ms. Durst's job and therefore is a part of her regular course of business, so it falls under the business record exception.
Response from the defense?
Your Honor, we do not know whether this is the custodian of these records at this time, and therefore the custodian is not here to testify, so it is a hearsay.
I think one of the stipulations was that chain of custody wasn't going to be an issue, so I'm going to overrule the objection. Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Durst, I will repeat my question. How are you related to this study?
I found the study while researching at Lush Fertilizer. I documented the study in my lab notebook on June 10th, 2003.
How does this study relate to your research as a whole?
This study explores the effects of the particular chemical compound that I was assigned to research.
Has this study been altered in any way since you last saw it?
No, it has not.
Your Honor, I believe that I've laid sufficient ground and move that Exhibit 3 be entered as evidence.
Any objection?
Your Honor, I stand by my hearsay objection.
Noted. We'll go ahead and admit the evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. McSturst, what did the study explore?
The study found that the particular chemical compound nitrogenous phosphorus carbonate in Drufo may actually be carcinogenic or highly likely to cause cancer in rats.
What was notable about this study?
Although the study did not deal with the effects of Drufo on humans, the impact that it had on the rats is still cause for concern and gives us all the more reason to investigate the chemical and its impacts even further.
To the best of your knowledge, what happens after you find a relevant study to your research?
Well, according to company practice, I file that relevant information in my research notebook.
Did you file this study in a research notebook?
Yes, I did, in my own on June 10th, 2003.
Was management involved in the research process?
Yes, when we completed our findings for the period, we would turn them in to our product manager.
To the best of your knowledge, what happens after you turn in your research notebooks to Lush?
Usually the product manager, in our case,
Objection, speculation.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Good.
Your Honor, the witness is answering within the scope of their knowledge as they worked at Lush Fertilizer and are familiar with management and research procedures.
I'm going to allow it.
Thank you. McSturst, would you like me to restate the question?
No worries, I heard your question. Usually the product manager, in our case, Jerry Langley, would review everyone's notebooks and compile them into a singular report to show senior management. I don't know why that would have changed in this instance.
Your Honor, I'm going to refer the witness to Exhibit 4. Let the record reflect that we are now looking at Exhibit 4.
So reflected.
Do you recognize this?
Yes.
What is it?
It's an email from my old product manager, Jerry Langley.
What is your relationship to it?
It was sent to me and my fellow researchers at Lush Fertilizer this September following our initial research campaign.
Has the email been altered in any way since you last saw it?
No, it has not.
Your Honor, I believe that I've laid sufficient foundation and move that Exhibit 4 be entered as evidence.
That's granted.
Thank you, Your Honor. McSturst, what did the email entail?
Within the email, Jerry informed us that Lush management wanted to reopen a study on overall conclusions, including investigating concerns on the validity of the claim that Drufo was carcinogenic in people. However, the actual email was pretty vague.
After the second wave of research was completed, what happened?
Well, we had concluded our analysis in December of 2003. We were gathered to discuss our findings with Jerry and higher up management, Alex Monroe.
Did your fellow scientists mention anything concerning?
Yes, actually, one scientist did express concern that Drufo may be both carcinogenic and linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Then what happened?
We were told to keep what was said as classified. However, about a month later, a copy of the study report hit my desk.
What did the study report contain?
The report said that more analysis was needed before any conclusions about the likelihood of the chemical compound causing any long-term health effects, including cancer, could be made.
What else was mentioned in the report?
The report recommended that baking Drufo could eliminate it as a possible carcinogen.
Finally, I would like to focus on the potential financial motives for Lush Fertilizer in relation to Drufo. McSturst, were you aware of anything that set Lush apart from competitors?
Yes, I am aware.
What is that?
Drufo.
To the best of your knowledge, how did Drufo help enhance Lush Fertilizer's business?
Drufo produced fertilizer with texture and longevity that set it apart from many of Lush's competitors, helping them to gain financial success.
Thank you, McSturst. No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Thank you, Your Honor. You worked for Lush Fertilizer.
Yes, from 2003 to 2006.
Your main job was to test their product safety.
My main job was to analyze chemical compounds and determine whether or not they were safe to use within certain compounds.
So to test their product safety.
I did not handle the chemicals myself.
Okay, you researched Drufo.
Yes, I looked into its safety task.
Drufo contains many different chemical compounds.
Yes, including nitrogenous phosphorus carbonate, which is carcinogenic.
And you were given the job of researching just one of them?
Yes, we have a
You
team
found-
that looks at different parts of it.
You found studies on rats.
Yes, rats are known to have very similar nervous and endocrine systems to humans and are often used in medical practice and in multiple studies to look at the effects of certain chemicals and certain procedures on humans.
You personally have never seen a test related to its impact on humans.
No, I personally have not witnessed it with my own eyes, if that's what you're asking.
Now I'd like to ask you a few questions about Lush's procedures. Your coworkers also did research
Yes, I would hope they did.
on products in Lush fertilizer.
Yes, including Drufa.
And after that, they submitted their research to your superiors.
Yes, well, I would hope they did. I can't be, held accountable for somebody else's actions.
That superior would compile it into one report,
That is correct.
then send these reports to administration.
Objection, speculation. Mixers cannot testify on where these reports go afterwards, especially the reports from her other coworkers.
Response?
Your Honor, co-counsel previously said that Carson Durst should be able to because she has been in Lush for a very long period of time and therefore knows the procedures at Lush Fertilizer.
There's been testimony about business practices. So I'm going to go ahead and allow it.
Thank you, Your Honor. They sent these reports to administration.
I would assume they did.
But you never knew what administration did with those reports.
I'm not administration, so I don't know.
And it is fair to assume that this is what happened with the research on Drufa.
Could you clarify your question, please?
Is it fair to assume that the previous procedures mentioned is what happened with the research on Drufa?
I mean, we can only assume that. I have limited knowledge about what goes on with administration.
Please direct your attention to Exhibit 4.
Just a second, I'm pulling that up really quickly. Okay. Yes.
This is an email?
Yes, it's an email.
Written by Gary Langley.
Yes.
And Jerry Langley is not here to testify about this email?
No.
Let's go back 16 or 17 years. You worked for Lush Fertilizer?
Yes, I did work for Lush Fertilizer about 16, 17 years ago.
While you were there, you went to see Blake Doncourt, the CEO, multiple times.
Yes.
One of those times, you complained about Jerry Langley, your direct superior.
Objection, relevance. Past interactions with Blake Doncourt or inside work issues are not relevant to today's case, as we are discussing whether or not Drufa is carcinogenic and causes cancer in people.
And from the defense, is our proffer about the admissibility or the relevance of this?
Your Honor, this is going to prove bias that is very relevant to the case as it relates to Carson Durst's relationship with Lush Fertilizer.
I'm going to permit it.
One of those you complained about Gary Langley, your direct superior.
I complained about not just my manager, but I also complained about many of the reports that were made against me that were unfair. They were biased because they tried to take into account my connection with the Doncourt family, and so they kind of skewed my reputation around with that.
And those reports were written by Gary Langley?
Yes.
Claiming that Gary Langley was being unfair to you?
Yes, I do still think that Jerry Langley was being unfair to me.
And Blake Doncourt dismissed you?
He treated me with it very rudely and told me to deal with my own issues. So
saying you needed to just do your job.
I believe he said that I needed to work through my own issues. I think that's what he said.
And you decided after that to search for new jobs?
Yeah, after being disrespected by my employer, any person would, move on to a company that knows how to respect their employees. So I applied to Terra Greenery and got in.
And Terra's Greenery is one of Lush Fertilizer's biggest competitors?
That is correct.
And you applied there because it would make Blake Doncourt angry?
Yeah.
Objection, argumentative.
Can you please restate your objection?
Yes, objection, argumentative, and relevance.
Defense counsel?
Your Honor, again, this goes to prove bias that is extraordinarily relevant to the case. and cross questions are intended to be argumentative.
I'm going to allow it. I think the witness is able to, and as long as we allow them to fully answer the question, I think it'll be okay. I'm going to overrule the objection.
Thank you, Your Honor. After that, or after you got the job, you were fired from Lush Fertilizer.
Hold on. Can the witness answer that question?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Because it would make Blake Doncourt angry.
At the time, I was a little heated, and so I applied for that reason. However, residual resentment has long subsided.
After you got the job, you were fired from Lush Fertilizer.
I was actually fired. I actually got the job before I was fired from Lush Fertilizer.
May the court and opposing counsel direct their attention to what has been previously marked for identification purposes as Exhibit 5. Ms. Durst, may you direct your attention to what has been previously marked as Exhibit 5?
Yes, I see it.
Please turn to the second page. That is your signature?
That appears to be my name on the line. However, I do not recall signing this agreement.
But that is your signature?
That appears to be my signature. As I stated, I do not recall signing this.
And I think we have a stipulation the signatures are all authentic, so let's move on.
Okay, this is a non-compete agreement?
It is.
Your Honor, I move the court to enter what has been previously marked for identification purposes as Exhibit 5 into evidence.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. Objection on relevance. A past issue and non-compete agreement, which has already been settled in a legal battle many years ago, is not relevant to today's case, as we are not here to discuss Ms. Durst's past employment issues. We are here to discuss the effects of DRUFO on humans.
And what's your proffer for the relevance?
Your Honor, again, this goes to show bias because Carson Durst was unable to make a living for the period of time in between jobs, and that would obviously at this time in his career be very detrimental.
I'm going to allow it, but we can give a jury instruction at the end.
This forced you not to work. Oh, sorry. This forced you not to work at any competing company.
Kind of. It's not entirely how it works. After the legal battle, I had to wait 6 months before starting my new employment.
And you were hired by Terry's Greenery?
That is correct. I stated that beforehand.
Before you had even been fired by Lush?
Asked and answered.
Let's move on. I think she's answered the question at least twice now.
Thank you, Your Honor.
But you don't remember signing this document?
I do not recall signing this document.
I would like to close by asking a few questions about Lush Fertilizer. Lush Fertilizer has the best-selling fertilizer on the market.
Currently, however, I'm working on a product that will soon overtake.
And you work at Terry's Greenery, one of Lush Fertilizer's biggest competitors?
Counsel, I've already answered this 2 times. I think it's very clear that I work at Terry's Greenery.
And you develop a fertilizer?
I oversee the development of safe fertilizers and lawn enhancement products.
A fertilizer that you hope will surpass Lush Fertilizer's best-selling product.
Objection relevance. The competition between these 2 companies is not relevant to today's case.
I think it goes to bias, so I'm going to permit it.
Thank you, Your Honor. A fertilizer that you hope will surpass Lush Fertilizer's best-selling product.
Counselor, as I said earlier, I do oversee the development of fertilizers, and that also includes making sure that they're competitive and that they bring in profits for my company. So yes, I do hope that the product that I'm currently working on does surpass the current #1 product in the market.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, a brief one. Hello again, Ms. Durst. Let's refocus on your history at Lush. How were your professional relationships affected after the performance reports?
Senior management began to push back against my role in choice assignments. I started to get really bad performance reviews, and I was accused of skating along. My relationship with the Doncourts also affected my reputation.
Did you do anything to address these reports?
I thought they were very unfair and biased. I eventually was put on probationary status with the company, and I went to talk to Mr. Doncourt about it.
How did your conversation with Mr. Doncourt go?
Well, when I was talking with Mr. Doncourt's administrative assistant about going in to speak with him, I heard yelling from his office, like seemed really worked up about
Objection
something.
outside the scope of cross.
Your Honor, when counsel began asking questions about Mix Durst addressing the performance reports, that opened up the door to this line of questioning, which is exactly about how Mix Durst approached and addressed these performance reports.
I'm going to allow it, but let's keep it brief.
Thank you, Your Honor. Mix Durst, what happened after you told Mr. Doncourt about your grievances?
Well, I told him about my concerns and I asked him to speak to my manager on my behalf.
Did he do anything?
He told me
Objection asked and answered.
Overruled.
He told me that he was busy with other issues at the moment and that I had to deal with my own work issues.
How did you respond?
Well, I realized that I had no future at Lush Fertilizer and applied at Terrace Greenery, its top competitor. When I began my employment there after being asked to leave Lush Fertilizer, a legal battle began.
And what happened then?
A settlement was reached. I had to wait 6 months to begin my new employment.
When did this occur?
December of 2006.
Mix Durst, how did you feel about the legal troubles and settlement?
Well, initially, I was upset and begrudgingly waited to work for Terrace Greenery. However, that was about 15 years ago. Any residual resentment has long subsided, and I'm currently focusing on doing the best at my current job.
If not due to resentment, why are you testifying today?
I am testifying today for the sake of truth and integrity, having witnessed the very flawed research process that occurred within Lush Fertilizer. I cannot simply stand by and watch as Lush gets away with harming the public.
Thank you, Mix Durst. No further questions, Your Honor.
Any recross?
None, Your Honor.
Okay. We'll excuse this witness and the plaintiffs can call their next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Ms. Dakota Weirs.
Go ahead.
Can you guys hear me all right?
Yes. Just turn up. Okay.
Can you please state your name as well?
Emily, we can barely hear you.
Take your time.
Okay, is this one better?
Much
Yes.
better. Go ahead.
Awesome, thank you. All right. Good afternoon, Ms. Weirs. Can you please state your name and spell the last for the record?
Dakota Weirs, W-E-I-R-S.
And Ms. Weirs, can you tell the jury a little bit about yourself?
I'm 20 years old. I was an active member of my community, from volunteering at my local homeless shelter to being the president of student government to even being a member of the National Honor Society.
Now, you use the past tense when describing your involvement in the community. Can you explain why that is?
I was recently diagnosed with non-Hodgkin lymphoma, a type of cancer that affects the germ-fighting immune system. This causes white blood cells to grow abnormally and form tumors throughout my body. You know, I used to always be involved in something, and now I can barely even help around the house.
And I know it's hard to quantify the impact of losing your livelihood, but can you explain the impact of losing the ability to be involved in extracurricular activities?
Yes, I was involved in various extracurricular activities, the most important to me being playing the piano. It's just so hard to wake up each day and not being able to participate in the activities that make me into who I am today.
Can you expand on that, Ms. Weirs?
From childhood, I was always enthralled by the baby grand piano my grandfather gave my parents. I would waddle over there and play with the foot pedals. It was the only part I was able to reach. I would set up a floor and spend the entire day there with my toys.
Please continue, Ms. Weirs.
When I was finally able to—
Objection relevance.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Go ahead.
Your Honor, we are seeking emotional damages. Having a basis and foundation of why emotional damages are important and the damage that they are is important to this line of questioning and important to this trial as a whole.
And your response, counsel?
Thank you, Your Honor. Emotion does not matter in this case. We are here to see how non-Hodgkin's lymphoma affected Dakota Weir's life and not the events before that.
Your Honor, may I respond?
I'm going to allow the testimony, but let's keep it. We don't need to have too much evidence in that area.
Awesome. Thank you, Your Honor. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Yes, please.
Please continue with the impact of playing the piano.
Okay. So when I was finally able to, I played little ditties that I wrote myself. And then my grandfather passed away.
How did your grandfather passing away impact you playing the piano?
Playing the piano made me feel close to him. He used to sit me on his knee and show me the different keys. Every time I would play, I was reminded of the love he had for me and this art.
And Ms. Weirs, take your time, but could you please explain to the jury about your 13 years of playing the piano?
I performed in many recitals, won numerous competitions. I was even offered scholarships.
Objection, unfair prejudice.
And can you further explain your objection, defense counsel?
Yes, it is probative value is outweighed by the danger of unfair prejudice.
Plaintiff's counsel, what's your response to that?
Your Honor, I'm just once again quantifying the impact of the emotional damages that we are seeking restitution for today. I feel like this line of questioning is imperative to evaluating those damages in the end.
I'm going to I'm going to overrule the objection for now, but we may have a limiting instruction for the jury at the end of the case. So
Thank you,
let's
Your Honor.
go forward. Let's keep that brief.
All right, and Ms. Weirs, we were just explaining how you won a full ride scholarship to Juilliard. And attending the school must have been a dream come true. How was your experience at Juilliard?
So unfortunately, the progression of my disease prevented me from attending.
Have you continued to play following the progression of your cancer?
I have not. Not being able to play the piano devastates me every day. Due to the swollen lymph nodes, frequent chills, chest pains, fatigue, and severe shortness of breath, I simply don't have the strength to sit for extended periods of time at the piano.
And what is the emotional impact of not being able to play the piano?
It feels like I lost my grandfather a second time. I used to always be able to feel close to him when I played, and that was taken from me by Lush Fertilizer.
And if it's all right with you, I'd like to turn your attention to Lush Fertilizer. Ms. Weirs, how are you connected to Lush Fertilizer?
I have been a landscaping technician at Haven Landscaping since I was 14 years old. Since I wasn't old enough to use the machinery, I would spread seed and fertilizers. One of the fertilizers I used was Lush Fertilizer.
Now, you say one of the fertilizer used was Lush Fertilizer. Why does this one stick out to you?
Well, while the other fertilizers and chemicals had long-term warnings about the use and dangers, Lush Fertilizer did not.
And what was on this bag of Lush Fertilizer?
Ingredients in Lush Fertilizer and short-term warnings.
And how many long-term warnings were on this bag?
None.
Let the record reflect, we are looking at our individual copies of what has been previously marked as Exhibit 1.
So noted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, do you recognize the document that is in front of you?
Yes.
And can you explain to the jury what it is?
This is a photograph of the bag of Lush Fertilizer that I received from my old boss at Haven Landscaping.
Does your boss have any reason to alter this bag of Lush Fertilizer?
He does not. He's not a beneficiary outcome of the case.
And is it a fair and accurate copy of the photograph you received?
Yes, it is.
And is it a fair and accurate copy, to the best of your recollection, the previous ingredients and short-term warnings about Lush Fertilizer?
Yes.
Your Honor, I believe I've laid sufficient foundation and offer Exhibit 1 to evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
So admitted.
Ready. Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, why do you think that Lush Fertilizer is responsible for your illness?
Well, there was a news story that exposed that this company had lied about the safety of its product. It particularly emphasized the negative impacts of Drufo. These documents actually connected Drufo to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
And what did further research about Lush Fertilizer reveal?
It was revealed that this non-Hodgkin lymphoma chemical, Drufo, is actually outlawed in France, Haiti, Liberia, Canada, Congo, and Cote d'Ivoire.
And let the record reflect, we are looking at our individual copies of what has been previously marked as Exhibit 2.
So
Ms.
noted.
Spears, do you recognize the document that is now in front of you?
Yes, I do.
And can you explain to the jury what it is?
This is a photograph of the bag of Lush fertilizer ingredients sold in France and its English translation. Emphasized is the lack of the chemical Drufo.
Is this a fair and accurate copy of the logo?
Yes.
Your Honor, I believe I have laid sufficient foundation and offer Exhibit 2 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
So admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Weers, how do you feel about the use of Drufo in Lush fertilizer?
I feel betrayed and shocked. I don't understand why a company would so willingly put its customers and the users of its product at risk. Drufo was proven to be—
Objection, lay opinion.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Go ahead.
Your Honor, this isn't lay opinion. As personally testifying to how Ms. Dakota Wires feels, she's not offering any expert testimony.
Any follow-up, defense counsel?
Yes, she is not an expert, but she is giving opinion onto how Lush treated this product.
Your Honor,
I'm gonna go ahead and allow it, but again, there'll be a cautionary instruction that you can both give input on that the jury will hear at the end. Go ahead.
thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Wires, if you can please continue.
Yes, of course. I'm just so betrayed and shocked since Drufo was proven to be harmful, and this company basically ignored that fact because it wasn't convenient.
And why else would you personally think that Drufo and Lush fertilizer caused your illness?
Non-Hodgkin lymphoma at its core is environmental, not genetic. I have a twin sibling, Skylar. We participate in identical activities besides my landscaping job. The only difference in our environments we had was my job.
Now, you mentioned your sibling Skylar, so let's turn your attention to this relationship. What is your relationship with Skylar like?
To say my relationship with Skylar is strained is an understatement. Once my father stopped paying her gambling debts and instead turned towards my medical bills, she became resentful. She told me that I was ruining the family legacy because my medical bills are so costly.
I understand. And can you explain your awareness of Skylar's career in journalism?
Objection, relevance.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Go ahead.
This is establishing character and credibility towards another witness that is here today.
Any response, defense counsel?
Yes, I do not see how this is relevant to our case. Again, we are talking about how non-Hodgkin's lymphoma has affected Dakota's life and not his relationship, or excuse me, her relationship to her twin Skylar Weers.
I think it can possibly go to damages, so I'm going to permit it.
Thank you, Your Honor. And
would you like me to answer the question?
I would. That would be great.
Well, Skylar wrote numerous articles about anti-vax culture, UFOs, flat Earth, chemtrails, and Drufo.
And finally, as a plaintiff, as hard as it is, we must identify and quantify the damages that brought us here today. I'll turn your attention to those damages. What damages are you seeking? How much restitution are you seeking today?
I'm seeking $300,000.
And can you explain the inconvenience of you being affected by your cancer?
Well, it's simply that I'm unable to do anything because of my sickness. It's hard to even sit for one place for an extended period of time, and I don't think that's going away anytime soon.
Please continue with the damages, Ms. Weers.
The emotional stress of this large company taking such a low blow by getting my only sibling to testify against me. My life has severely deteriorated. I can't do anything I love doing. I can't volunteer. I can't participate in extracurricular activities. I can't help around the house. And I can't even play the piano.
And what other type of damages are you seeking restitution for?
Emotional damages, losing the ability to play the piano, feeling like I lost my grandfather a second time, losing the opportunity to attend my dream school. It's all been soul crushing. Lush Fertilizer took each and every one of these from me.
Thank you, Ms. Weers. Your Honor, that will be all at this time.
Thank you. Cross-examination?
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. You worked for a landscaping company ever since you were 14, correct?
Yes.
And your main job was to spread the fertilizers?
Yes, since I wasn't old enough at the time to use the machinery.
Of course. And for 4 summers,
Yes, that is correct.
every day.
Yes.
And Lush wasn't the only fertilizer you used, correct?
While working as a landscaping technician is within my job qualifications that I use a number of fertilizers. However, while those fertilizers had long-term warnings, Lush did not.
And you used many fertilizers, correct?
Yes, I use numerous fertilizers.
Lots of fertilizers.
Yes.
Objection asked and answered.
I think the answer was clear, so let's move along, council.
And you use different pesticides, correct?
That is correct.
Many of them?
That is correct.
When handling these fertilizers, you were recommended to wear protective gear?
My boss recommended it, but whether he recommended it or not, he did not give me cancer. Lush fertilizer gave me cancer.
Thank you. Which included long sleeves?
Yes, those were the recommendations my boss did give
A
me.
mask?
Yes.
Long pants?
Yes.
Gloves?
Yes.
And this was all for your safety?
Objection, badgering the witness.
I'm going to overrule but caution counsel to make sure that she has some time to finish her answers. Then I'm sure we can all keep the decorum we need to keep.
Of course.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Counsel, would you like me to answer this question?
Yes. And this was all for your safety?
Yes, I understand that the protective gear is for my safety. However, Lush fertilizer didn't specify the long-term warnings.
In fact, your boss told you to wear a mask?
As I said, whether
Asked and answered.
I'm going to sustain objection. Let's move along, counsel.
But you didn't wear the protective clothing.
As I said, I did not wear the protective clothing, but maybe if Lush fertilizer had specified their long-term warnings and maybe my coworkers would have done things differently.
You didn't even wear any long sleeves?
Objection, asked and answered.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Go ahead.
I asked earlier that the protective clothing included long sleeves. Now I am asking the witness that she did not even wear these protective clothing.
I'm going to overrule it. Go ahead.
Thank you.
Shall I answer the question, counsel?
I will repeat it and then you can. Thank you.
Thank you.
You didn't even wear any long sleeves?
Whether I wore long sleeves or not, Lush did not specify their long-term warnings. They also used a chemical that was carcinogenic. That's the issue here.
I'm going to instruct the witness to answer the question.
Thank you, Your Honor. No mask.
As I said before, I did not wear a mask.
No long pants.
As I said before, I did not wear long pants.
Ever?
Is that a question?
Yes, it is.
Ever. Yes.
Because it was just too hot outside.
Yes, as I said, it was in the summer and it was very hot outside.
And you wore shorts instead of long pants.
Yes, as I said before.
And you wore a t-shirt instead of long sleeves.
Yes.
And you loved feeling the wind in your face.
Objection, relevance.
Is there a proffer for the relevance of this question and the potential answer?
Yes, there is, Your Honor. This question is relevant because it is going to show how the plaintiff did not obey Lush's recommendations and instead chose to do other things.
Your Honor, may I respond?
I'm going to permit it, but let's try to keep the questions brief.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, let the record reflect that I ask opposing counsel to direct their attention to Exhibit 1, and I ask that Ms. Weirs does the same.
Noted.
Ms. Weirs, you have seen this before, correct?
Yes.
This is the label of the fertilizer?
Yes, it is.
Will you please follow along as I read under the second column with the bold title, Hazards?
Yes.
Thank you. Hazards. Keep out of reach of children. Caution. Now, I finished reading for a second, will you skip down with me to the bold title, User Safety Recommendations?
Yes, I see that.
Thank you. User safety recommendations. As with any spray fertilizer, utilize protective clothing that covers exposed skin. Use of a respirator or N95 face mask is recommended. Follow manufacturer's instructions for cleaning/maintaining personal protective equipment. You agree that these are safety recommendations for your safety?
These are safety recommendations, but I don't see any long-term warnings on the packaging.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
You're welcome. Any redirect?
Yes, Your John. Just a brief one, if you don't mind.
When the witness is ready.
Ms. Weirs, were you the only one of your people involved with Haven Landscaping who didn't wear protective clothing?
Yes, my coworkers did not wear protective clothing either.
So the reasonable person using Lush fertilizer didn't wear protective clothing?
Yes, if Lush fertilizer had specified the long-term warnings, maybe me and my coworkers might have done things differently.
And can you explain briefly to the jury what the difference between a recommendation and a requirement?
A requirement is an obligation, it's needed, while a recommendation is just a suggestion.
And were the recommendations or requirements on this bag of Lush fertilizer?
It says user safety recommendations.
And anywhere on this bag is it indicated that Lush fertilizer can lead to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
No.
Thank you, Your Honor. That will be all.
Any limited recross?
Yes, Your Honor, briefly.
Go ahead.
Miss Weirs, if your friends jumped off a cliff, would you?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevancy and argumentative.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Go ahead.
Your Honor, I am metaphorically stating that Miss Weir's ability to decide for her own if she wanted to wear the protective gear or not, with this metaphor of her friends jumping off a cliff.
Your Honor,
Counsel, can you, defense counsel, just try to rephrase your question and see if you can ask it in a more direct way?
Of course. Your friends didn't wear the protective clothing?
No, they did not.
But you had free will to choose if you could wear protective clothing.
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. This witness is excused. And does the plaintiff have 1/3 witness to present?
Thank you, Your Honor.
The plaintiff rests, Your Honor.
Okay. And the defense, when you are ready to present your case in chief, please go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. The defense would like to call Blake Doncourt to the stand. Please state your name and spell your last for the record.
My name is Blake Doncourt, Doncourt.
Why are you here today, Ms. Doncourt?
I am here to defend my company, Lush Fertilizer, from the false claim that we ignored a carcinogen in our fertilizer.
How successful is your company?
My company is largely successful, so much so that we can divert 10% of our profits to charity. We have created our own charity, and in 2019, we were awarded the SEAL Sustainability Award. And in 2020, I myself was nominated for the Champions of the Earth, but I had been hoping to win it again before all of this happened.
Congratulations. Has Lush always been this successful?
No, certainly not. When we were a much smaller company, we were so small that when the EU decided to ban our game-changing product, Drufo, we did not have the money to fight the decision at the time. Although now we are hoping to fight that decision once more.
Counsel, we can't hear you.
My apologies. Moving on from that, does Lush Fertilizer bake their products now?
No, we do not.
Why do you still not bake your products?
Well, we don't bake our products because although that would remove any risk that our products were carcinogenic, since there was no definable risk in the first place of our product being carcinogenic. It was simply a waste of time and money to alleviate a risk that wasn't there.
Is the profit involved in why you're not baking the fertilizer?
Certainly it is a factor because I am running a company and I need to think of what is best for the profit of my company, but that is not the only reason. If there was a real danger that our product could be carcinogenic, we would certainly bake it no matter the cost. We didn't bake it because there was no definable risk that it was.
Is there a warning on your fertilizer bags specifically for non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
No, there's no reason to put a warning on our fertilizer packaging about non-Hodgkin's lymphoma because our fertilizer does not cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
And is there a warning label on the bag for general risks that may be presented by the fertilizer?
Yes, of course. We most certainly want to keep our customers safe. And so there are warnings that, just as with any chemical, because it is a chemical fertilizer, people using it should protect their skin and wear a mask and follow proper safety precautions so as not to get sick.
All right, and moving on to another topic, who is Carson Durst in relation to you?
They were a former friend of the family and employee, but they no longer are.
Why are they no longer working for you?
Well, I had to fire them after multiple abysmal performance reviews.
What did Carson Durst do for the company as their job?
Objection, Your Honor.
Carson Durst.
May I expand, Your Honor?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. This witness is testifying to the criteria of another witness who has already been given a cross-examination and a direct examination. Therefore, I feel like their opinion on Carson Durst is not relevant to their testimony, their direct testimony today.
And defense counsel, how do you respond?
I would like to respond. Carson Durst is used to be an employee of Blake Doncourt, and I think that it is important that they're brought into this case and their involvement in the case and in the company.
And how would that testimony or how would that evidence make a fact more or less likely to be true that's relevant here? So can you please, I guess, tell the court how it's relevant to a material part of this case?
Carson Durst was the product development engineer years ago for the company, and I think that's important in the development of Drufo and how it became part of the company's fertilizer.
I'm going to overrule the objection for now, but if it's not relevant, I'll let you renew your objection in a few minutes.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Would you like me to repeat the question, Ms. Doncourt?
Yes, please.
What did Mr. Durst do for the company? Or my apology, what did Carson Durst do for the company?
Mr. Durst was a research and development engineer on my team. It was their job to make sure that the product was safe, along with the other research and development engineers, and to warn me and the company of any dangers that our product might pose to our customers.
Did they ever notify you of any of the risks?
No, they did not.
And do you know if they've been employed since being fired?
Objection, lack of personal knowledge.
Response?
Blake Doncourt knows that Carson Durst now works for Terrace Greenery, and I'm restating it by asking.
I'm going to allow it.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Would you like me to repeat you're going to allow the question, Your Honor, or allow the objection?
I'm going to allow the testimony to overrule the objection.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you like me to repeat the question, Ms. Doncourt?
Yes, please.
Do you know if Carson Durst has been employed since you fired them?
Yes, they work at Terrace Greenery now.
Thank you. And how is Terrace Greenery related to the company Lush Fertilizer?
Terrace Greenery is one of Lush's biggest competitors. And Carson Durst, after signing the non-compete agreement that all of our employees sign, could not go and work there after signing that agreement.
Your Honor, I would reiterate my objection on relevance. I don't feel like any of the new information brought up was any different than what was covered in the direct examination of Carson Durst or the cross-examination of Carson Durst, and therefore I move to have Blake Doncourt's testimony about Carson Durst stricken from the record.
I'm going to overrule it, and if there is any issue, we can always address it with jury instructions at the end, but I will caution defense counsel to move along because I imagine you have other points you want to make as well. So overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Doncourt, do you have the exhibit booklet in front of you?
I do.
Your Honor, I'm directing opposing counsel's attention to what was previously marked for identification purposes as Exhibit 4.
The record will so note.
Before your preparation for this case, had you ever seen this document?
No, I had not.
And where would Carson Durst have found this email?
Objection, hearsay.
Response, counsel.
This is not hearsay. I'm asking Blake Doncourt where possibly it could have been found.
I think you can. It's allowed. Yeah, she can testify about whether or not she's aware of the email or how it came into possession. If you're going to offer the email for the truth of any matter asserted in it, then we'll go back to the objection. But for now, it's overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Let me repeat the question for you. Where would Carson Durst have found this email?
I honestly have no idea. We gave the lawyers access to our email history and the documents that our company has, and our search did not turn this document up anywhere in our history or database.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor, there's a cross-examination.
Okay.
All right. Before I begin, are the pronouns she, her okay for you today?
Yes, thank you.
All right, awesome. All right, then, good evening, Ms. Blake Doncourt. My name is Emily Bell, and I'll be conducting your cross-examination at this time. Ms. Doncourt, is it true that you direct 10% of all annual profits to charities that reduce the world's global nitrogen footprint?
It is.
But don't 100% of your profits come from selling a nitrogen-based product, fertilizer?
Yes, but with Drufo, our game-changing product, it makes it so that less nitrogen goes out into the environment, and so is slowly helping to work towards less nitrogen in the environment.
In due to allotting 10% of all annual profits, you were personally nominated for the United Nations 2021 Champions of Earth Award, correct?
Yes.
But you state you didn't win this award because of this lawsuit.
Yes, certainly. If my product had harmed anybody, which it didn't, it would look bad.
I'm glad you brought up that your product could product harming people. Now, so let's talk about the safety of lush fertilizer. You state that there's no valid evidence that directly links lush fertilizer to cancer, correct?
Yes.
And you state that you've never seen even scientific evidence showing even a reasonable probability that Drufo is carcinogenic.
Yes.
But you are aware of Dr. Casey Rogers' study that does, in fact, link Drufo to being carcinogenic.
Yes, I am aware that they talked about it today.
And did but you were aware of the study before this trial, correct?
Yes.
And you didn't personally investigate any such claims that stemmed from the study?
No, I'm not a scientist, so it would be out of my area of expertise.
But you still didn't personally ensure that your company, multi-million-dollar lush fertilizer, investigate any such claims that stemmed from the study?
I did ensure that when our company did extensive research on the product, and the EPA found that we did not have any definable risk of our product being carcinogenic.
Was this following Dr. Casey Rogers' study?
Perhaps.
So your statement today in court today is that you did follow up research pertaining to Dr. Casey Rogers' study revealing that Drufo is carcinogenic, correct?
No, we did not find that it was carcinogenic.
So you did not do any follow-up studies?
I'm sorry. I'm a little confused on what you're asking. Could you rephrase the question?
Yeah, not a problem. So following the publication, because it was published, Dr. Casey Rogers' study that links Drufa to cancer, you didn't follow up and investigate these claims?
No.
And you would agree with me, because this study exists, you and your company did not take the essential steps to ensure that Lush fertilizer is not carcinogenic.
No, I would not agree with you on that. I'm sorry, but we did do multiple studies, extensive research, and we found that our product was.
Let's turn towards our personal connections in this case. Dr. Devin Williams, your employee who had the job to ensure that Lush fertilizer wasn't carcinogenic is on your payroll, correct?
Yes.
And the plaintiff's only sibling, Skylar Weirs, is testifying on behalf of Lush fertilizer today, correct?
Yes.
And as CEO of the company being sued, it is reasonable to assume that everyone assembled on the defense today is on your payroll, correct?
Well, my employees are.
So let's look more towards the personal financials, if you don't mind. Are financials important to you personally?
Well, I suppose so, yes. Any owner of a business would need to pay attention to finances.
And do you make plenty of money for personal matters?
Objection relevance.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Go ahead.
This goes to the financial motives of Blake Doncourt being here today. Following the verdict of this lawsuit, it could be possible that the personal financials of the CEO could be affected.
Defense counsel, any response?
Yes, Your Honor. What Blake Doncourt does personally with her money does not relate to this case.
I'm going to overrule the objection. I think it goes to potential bias, but let's keep it brief.
Thank you, Your Honor. Would you like me to restate my question, Ms. Doncourt?
Yes, please.
Do you make plenty of money for personal matters?
Yes.
And are financials important to you on a company level?
Yes, certainly. I want to make my company successful.
And because they're important, you cut a necessary safety measure, correct?
I didn't. I did cut an unnecessary safety measure because there was no reason to bake our fertilizer.
But you state, quote, baking the fertilizer would remove any risk that our fertilizer was carcinogenic, correct?
Yes, it would. But since there was no definable risk, there was no reason to bake it.
And you go further to state that you didn't bake this because it was too expensive, correct?
That was part of the reason, yes.
All right, thank you, Your Honor. There's no further questions at this time.
Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. We'll excuse this witness, and defense, please call your next witness.
The defense calls Skylar Weirs to the stand.
Thank you.
Please state your name and spell your last for the record.
My name is Skylar Weirs, W-E-I-R-S.
What do you do for a living, Miss Weirs?
I am an investigative journalist for The Rationalist.
And what is The Rationalist?
The Rationalist is a science education and advocacy magazine specifically focused on debunking pseudoscience and irrationality.
Thank you. And what kind of things do you write about, Miss Weirs?
I myself have written a number of articles on the conflict between corporate policy and individual health.
And what are some specific topics you've written on?
I was recently asked to write a series of articles on modern agritech, specifically questioning the causal link between Drufo and cancer.
And have any of these articles addressed Drufo?
Yes, as mentioned, questioning its link to cancer.
And how long did you spend researching Drufo?
I spent about a year reading and researching for that article on Drufo.
Can you explain to the jury what your research involved?
Yes, of course. So I myself am not a scientist. As I mentioned, I am a journalist. So in researching for this article, I looked at as many different sources as possible from experts in the field. I looked at publications put out by companies in the field, as well as any research mentioned in those publications. I looked at any study I could find. I looked at information put out by the United States Department of Agriculture, as well as the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture. And on top of that, I looked at general information, statistical information, historical information to try and get the best overall view of DRUFO and its effects and what leading scientists have to say about it.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move for the recognition of this witness as an expert in the field of fertilizers and pesticides, specifically DRUFO.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, there is a brief voir dire.
Let's keep it brief. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Ms. Weers. My name is Mackenzie Dana.
No,
and I will
I'm
be-
sorry. I don't think voir dire is allowed for witnesses. So I thought you meant a sidebar. I'm going to go ahead and deny the request. And can you argue against the objection?
Yes, I can.
No,
Your
I'm sorry.
Honor,
Sorry. I'm sorry. Who you objected? So can you
yes,
support the objection with a legal argument?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff objects to Skylar Weers being entered as an expert in DRUFO pesticides and modern agritech because Skylar Weers has not conducted any formal research herself. She has only done online research for about a year, and she describes her knowledge base as a general knowledge base.
So if this were federal court, we might actually have a real, forget the name of the case, but there's in the 700s of evidence rules, a Daubert hearing on it. But for today, we're going to go ahead and qualify her as an expert. Thank you for the objection.
thank you, Your Honor. Okay, now moving on. Who produces DRUFO?
Lush Fertilizer produces DRUFO.
Does anyone else?
No, it is unique to Lush Fertilizer.
And what is unique about DRUFO compared to other fertilizers?
DRUFO is an incredibly effective bonding agent, which means that it has to be applied much less often than other fertilizers, reducing possible potential exposure to harmful chemicals, as all agricultural products, specifically chemical ones, are harmful by nature.
And how does it do that?
Right, so because of its ability to stay in the soil longer, DRUFO only has to be applied 1 to 2 times a year, whereas other pesticides and fertilizers would have to be applied multiple times a year, therefore increasing exposure to the product and increasing the risks associated with exposure.
Is there anything else unique about DRUFO?
Yes, it is also a very good pesticide. So rather than having to apply a pesticide on top of your regular fertilizer, consumers can just apply one product, Lush Fertilizer, including DRUFO, and again, be less commonly exposed to harmful products like other pesticides, such as arsenic or glyphosate.
Thank you. And are there any benefits to using DRUFO instead of those other pesticides?
Yes, so arsenic and glyphosate, apologies, have been shown to cause cancer. They have a proven link, multiple studies. DRUFO does not have a definitive proven link to cancer. So using that rather than those other products would of course be safer.
And do you know of any link between DRUFO and cancer like those other pesticides have?
In my very extensive research, I have not seen any credible studies linking DRUFO to cancer.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor, at this time.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Hello, Ms. Weers. My name is Mackenzie Dana, and I will be conducting your cross at this time. Let's begin with your relationship to this case and the plaintiff's family. And this includes financially. Ms. Weers, does your career in writing support you financially?
Not solely. I have a part-time job on top of that career, but I hope to be solely dependent on my writing career within a few years.
Do you have any other habits that affect your finances?
Yes, I do gamble.
Did these gambling habits lead to a quote financial?
Objection relevance.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Go ahead.
This line of questioning goes to establish potential financial motive and residual resentment, which goes to the credibility of Skylar Weirs. Because Skylar is testifying as an expert today, her credibility is directly relative to this case.
I'm going to go ahead and overrule the objection for now, but I'll let you redo it if there is no chance for bias shown. But for now, go ahead.
Thank you,
Thank you, Your Honor.
Ms. Weirs, would you like me to restate the question?
Yes, please.
Did your gambling habits lead to a quote financial hole, end quote?
Yes, I believe I did say that.
So far, you haven't been able to pull yourself out of that hole?
Not yet. Again, I have multiple streams of income and I'm hoping to better myself in the next few years.
Were your parents helping you?
No, after my sister was unfortunately diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, my parents started mainly focusing on helping her with her medical bills.
However, beforehand, were your parents helping you?
Beforehand, they were, yes.
And your father recently cut you off?
Yes, again, because Dakota needs the money.
And so your parents are still helping Dakota, with whom you have a strained relationship?
Yeah, we never had the typical twin relationship, but obviously I still care about her.
Let's move on to agritech. You studied modern agricultural products and their impact on the environment?
I did.
Do these modern products actually benefit the agricultural sector more than they harm it?
Can you rephrase that question? I'm a little confused by what
Yeah,
you're
of course.
asking.
So do these modern products, which you studied, actually benefit and help the agricultural sector more than they harm it? So does the benefit of these products outweigh the harm?
Yes, in the sense that they are environmentally friendlier generally. I'm still a little confused on what you're getting at, but yes. It's
However,
kind of a judgment I can't really make.
Okay. However, there are risks associated with such products.
Of course, agricultural products, as mentioned before, especially chemical ones, are pretty dangerous generally.
Many modern agricultural products contain pesticides and herbicides.
Yes.
Are pesticides and herbicides, by definition, poison?
Yes, I've said that they are, by definition, poisons.
And do most commercial pesticides contain carcinogens?
Yes, like arsenic or glyphosate.
And it's your opinion that no chemical fertilizer will ever be truly safe?
Yes, I don't believe that that's a possibility, at least in the near future.
Is Lush fertilizer a chemical fertilizer?
It is.
I now want to talk specifically about Drufo. Is Drufo an effective pesticide?
Incredibly so.
You stated earlier that most pesticides do contain carcinogens.
Yes, other pesticides do. Drufo has not been shown to be a carcinogen.
However, Drufo is a pesticide.
It is?
Okay, and because most other pesticides contain carcinogens, is it reasonable to assume that Drufo also contains potential carcinogens?
I do not think I have the ability to make assumptions like that.
All right, thank you, Ms. Weirs. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. We'll excuse this witness and the defense can call their next witness.
The defense calls Dr. Devin Williams to the stand.
All right, when you're ready, counselor.
Dr. Williams, please state your name and spell your last for the record.
Devin Williams, Williams.
Dr. Williams, what is your job?
I lead the toxicology research and development labs at Lush Fertilizer, and I'm the outgoing chair of the company's ethics committee.
How long have you worked at Lush Fertilizer?
Well, I've worked there for roughly a decade, and I've led the research and development labs for about 7 years.
Could you explain what this job entails?
Well, yes, it means I work to understand how the outdoor world will respond to outside influences such as our fertilizer.
What training led you to this job at Lush Fertilizer?
Well, my undergraduate at Colorado State University, my PhD, and my postdoctorate, which are detailed in my CV.
Dr. Williams, could you direct your attention to what has been previously marked for identification purposes as Exhibit 9?
Yes.
Opposing counsel, please direct your attention to what has been previously marked for identification purposes as Exhibit 9. Dr. Williams, do you recognize this document?
I do.
What is this document?
This is my CV.
Is this a fair and accurate representation of your CV?
It is.
Does it properly list all of your education and experience?
It does.
Your Honor, I move the court to enter Exhibit 9 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, granted.
Dr. Williams, could you give a list of the highlights of your education?
I'd be happy to. I have a specialized postdoctorate in pharmacotoxicology, or the pharmaceutical effects of drugs on humans. I also have various accreditations and certifications in Colorado, New Mexico, Wyoming, and Utah.
Dr. Williams, do you have any publications?
I do, such as the forensic aspects of poison and several others.
What other professional experience do you have?
Well, I have my research in the field and my ability to evaluate test results to determine the effects of toxins on the outside world and the human body.
What has all of this training allowed you to do at Lush Fertilizer?
It has allowed me to postulate as to the broader effects of our fertilizer on the outside world using our test results as a basis.
Could you explain what that means to the jury?
Absolutely. It means that I can determine whether or not something will be harmful to the average human body and how to neutralize those negative effects if they were to occur.
Your Honor, I move the court to recognize Dr. Devin Williams as an expert in chemical toxicology, pharmacology, and research and development processes at Lush Fertilizer.
Any objection?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
Okay. So the motion is granted.
Dr. Williams, how were you introduced to DRUFO?
Well, I was introduced when about half of the research and development team had moved on to ventures outside the company.
Could you explain why DRUFO is used in Lush's fertilizer?
I would be happy to. DRUFO is a revolutionary part of our fertilizer that bonds specially to the fertilizer and to whatever it's put on so that we can prevent eutrophication.
What problem did DRUFO solve from prior fertilizers?
It is helping to solve the problem of excess nitrate runoff.
Why did that process lead to the development of DRUFO?
Well, that process of excess nitrate runoff, which is called eutrophication, we're trying to solve that by using DRUFO. Because of the way it binds, less nitrates run off, and the nitrate runoff kills fish and causes harmful algae to bloom that can hurt humans, and we want to prevent that.
Why is DRUFO so revolutionary?
No other fertilizer does this so far. Our product prevents eutrophication in a way that nothing else does.
Why is DRUFO banned in the EU?
DRUFO is banned in the EU because in laboratory tests, when DRUFO is manipulated, it shows the same nitrate accumulation as other fertilizers.
And why is it banned in smaller countries such as Haiti or Liberia?
Unfortunately, those countries don't have the money to test for such things generally, so they follow what the EU does. But it was not banned because of any concerns about DRUFO.
Why didn't Lush fight the EU's decision if there was no concrete scientific proof?
At the time, we were a very small company and it wasn't worth the fight, but we're planning to reconsider so that more people can use our revolutionary product.
Is there any study that proves that Drufo causes lymphoma?
Well, there is the study that Casey Rogers conducted, but other than that, no.
Is it important to compare those using fertilizers with Drufo to those using fertilizers without Drufo?
Absolutely. If you don't, you're going to get biased results.
And how could bad comparisons, and what could bad comparisons lead to in those statistics?
Well, they could lead to results like those Casey Rogers got. If you don't compare and account for every factor, then you won't get a result that is completely truthful.
And in your expert opinion, did Drufo cause the defendant's lymphoma?
Absolutely not. It is terrible that Dakota Weirs has to suffer from this, but it wasn't caused by Drufo.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you. Any cross-examination?
There is a cross-examination, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
If you're ready, Doctor, I will begin. Let's first discuss why you're here today, Doctor. You're employed by Lush.
I am.
And of course, you're paid for that work at Lush.
Yes, I happen to be the head of research and development.
So, for clarity, Doctor, you're being paid to be here today.
Well, yes.
And you're here telling the jury that Drufo is safe.
Yes.
And you stated previously you're head of the toxicology department at Lush?
I am.
Okay. And that department's job is to determine the safety of Drufo.
Yes.
So, in other words, your job depends on the safety of Drufo.
Well, yes, it depends on testing to make sure that all of our products are safe.
But Lush's profits depend on the ability to sell Lush fertilizer.
Yes.
And a court ruling like today that found Drufo to be unsafe would limit that ability.
Well, yes, it would.
Not only that, but a court decision like this would reflect on your reputation as a scientist as well.
Potentially.
Moving on, let's discuss the experiments on Drufo. Your company ran tests on Drufo,
Yes.
and these tests determined that Drufo is not harmful.
Yes,
But you are aware of Dr. Casey Rogers' study,
I am.
and you personally looked into that study,
Yes.
and that study concluded Drufo to be harmful.
Yes, but I don't think that study was completely unbiased.
But having reviewed that study, you're aware that Dr. Rogers' study followed human subjects,
Yes.
and she followed those subjects over a period of multiple years.
Yes.
So reasonably, one of your well-constructed experiments would have studied humans.
Yes. That's what we were testing for.
But did any of your studies actually involve human subjects like Dr. Casey Rogers did?
Well, no, we were testing for the safety. We weren't going to test something that could potentially be carcinogenic on humans. When we found out it wasn't, there was no reason to even bother.
But Lush fertilizer is a product that's meant for human use, Doctor.
Yes.
And one of your experiments must have at least followed whatever type of animal subjects you used over a long period of time to determine the long-term effects, right?
Yes.
So your studies followed their subjects over a period of years, similar to Dr. Casey Rogers' study?
Yes, we did studies on that type of thing.
But for clarity, Doctor, did your studies actually follow them over a period of multiple years, almost a decade, like Dr. Casey Rogers did, or were your studies more short-term?
Our studies were Our studies were conducted in a period of time that was suitable to show that Drufo does not cause cancer, and it was found not to, so we put it out on the market and we know it's safe.
Thank you. And you were able to make conclusions about the long-term effect of Drufo on humans,
Yes.
despite not having any human subjects and not following them for a lengthy period of time, like say the period of time it takes for cancer to develop?
Yes.
Moving on, when new evidence came to light in Dr. Rogers' study that showed Drufo to be carcinogenic, did you at least conduct a follow-up study to prove hers incorrect?
No, we already know that Drufo does not cause cancer.
So you did not conduct a follow-up study.
No.
That will be all, Your Honor.
Any redirect?
Briefly, Your Honor. Would you ever let financial incentives overweigh your oath and the safety of others?
Of course not. I'm a scientist. We look to find the truth, and we did tests and found that Drufo was safe.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Any limited recross based on that?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
Okay. We'll excuse the witness, and I believe, does the defense have anything else for their case in chief?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Then we can proceed to closing arguments.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right, everyone can hear and see me all right? All right, and with that, I will begin. Opposing counsel, members of the jury, and esteemed judge, we are here to establish truth, and in doing so, justice. We are here to ensure that the negligence of Lush Fertilizer is not ignored, and we are here to ensure that the damage done to Miss Weir's life due to Lush Fertilizer is not ignored. We are here to establish truth, and in doing so, justice. And the truth revealed through this case by a preponderance of evidence is that Lush was negligent. However, first, I would like to refocus you on the life we are impacting today. Dakota Weirs, a young woman who was just figuring out life on her own. Lush Fertilizer not only poisoned the life of Miss Weirs, but the livelihood of everything she held dear. Now she struggles to even hold herself up. Lush Fertilizer insists that there is simply no way the product is carcinogenic, but if it was, Dakota Weirs is at fault. But the plaintiff called up 3 witnesses that proved 4 key elements. 1, Lush made a dangerous product. 2, Lush failed to break the product, which would have eliminated the risk. 3, Dakota, working for a landscaping company, used Lush. And finally, Dakota is now suffering the damages done by Lush Fertilizer. First, you heard from Dr. Casey Rogers, who proved the connection between Drufo being carcinogenic. Dr. Rogers studied people for a number of years to truly evaluate a risk in Drufo. She proved Drufo causes non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. You then heard from Carson Durst, a former employee of Lush who found the risks of Drufo and brought these dangers to the attention of Lush management, only to be told to quiet down to protect the credibility of Lush Fertilizer, proving Lush was aware that Drufo can lead to cancer. And finally, you heard from the victim of this case, Dakota Weirs. You heard about her life of countless accomplishments, only for her future to be ripped away at the roots. Her life was forever changed by her cancer. She is clearly suffering because of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma caused by Lush Fertilizer. But the defense wants you to believe the word of bought testimony and claims intertwined with the disastrous roots of their case: spite, negligence, ego. There was spite stemming from every word Skylar Weirs spoke. She has a personal stake in this case because if her sister were to get much needed recompense, the gambling debts of Skylar Weirs will continue to go unpaid. She even stated during cross-examination that Drufo is a poison, but continues to testify against family because Lush is filling her pockets as an expert witness. Ms. Weirs' personal relationship is impacting her professional one intertwined with spite. You then heard from Dr. Devin Williams, the head of toxicology at Lush Fertilizer. Her obligation was to ensure that Lush was not carcinogenic. Her blatant negligence, ladies and gentlemen, is the reason we are here today. It was revealed through cross-examination that Dr. Williams completed 0 experiments involving human persons and 0 followed when another study revealed that Lush was carcinogenic. She is on the payroll of the CEO, making her testimony biased. Her inability to perform adequate studies nor complete any type of research that discredits Dr. Casey Rogers was an act of negligence. Negligence surrounded Lush and all their employees. And finally, you heard from Ms. Blake Doncourt, a disgruntled CEO who was knocked out of the running for the 2021 Champions of Earth Award. Ms. Doncourt's testimony is twisted with ego, an ego that put profit over safety. In fact, she stated baking the fertilizer would remove any risk that our fertilizer was carcinogenic, but the baking process was just too expensive. She is paying everyone here today to say the precise thing to avoid the truth. The ego of Lake Doncourt got in the way of human decency and safety. Spite, negligence, ego, intertwined with the defense's case like a vine on a tree, choking the life out of Miss Weirs a second time, forcing her to seek recompense for emotional damages, inconvenience, and emotional stress amounting to $300,000. Emotional stress. There is an emotional stress to drastic change in quality of life. Miss Dakota Weirs physically cannot participate in the activities that made her into the accomplished young woman she is today. Inconvenience. Being able to complete anything or sit at one place for an extended period of time is, at its most basic level, inconvenient. And finally, emotional damages. It was heartbreaking to be unable to end the school of Miss Weirs during Miss Juilliard. But members of the jury, we all have someone in our lives we are close to, someone who mentored us, someone who we loved. For Dakota Weirs was her grandpa, taken from her years ago, but because of Lush fertilizer, she feels like he is taken from her all over again. This is not only emotionally damaging, it is emotionally traumatizing. We, members of the jury and esteemed judge, are here to establish truth, and in doing so, justice. And the truth is, Lush Fertilizer did not take the necessary precautions to ensure that Drufo was not carcinogenic. The truth is, Lush Fertilizer was negligent. But now, with the truth brought to light, we can bring justice. I urge you to find Lush Fertilizer liable because spite, negligence, and ego do not and should not make a case. Truth does. Thank you.
You're welcome. The defense, closing argument.
Thank you, Your Honor. May I proceed? Thank you. Lush's warnings were thrown to the wind. You have heard about the plaintiff's blatant disregard of any safety precautions. The plaintiff, despite the explicit instruction of Haven Landscaping, the company she worked for, chose not to use any protective equipment. The plaintiff followed her friends who worked for Haven and never used protective equipment. This activity was blatantly ignoring the warnings on the back of the fertilizer bag. The plaintiff places the blame on Lush Fertilizer for the reason she avoided wearing protection. And because of this, she suffered the consequences. These consequences being the horrible condition of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Despite this horrible outcome, however, it was Dakota Weirs' decision to not cover up her skin and instead let her hair flow in the wind. Lush's warnings were thrown in the wind. Today, you heard from Blake Doncourt, whose hard work, dedication, and willingness to invest her life in her company, Lush Fertilizer, made it clear that she had pure intentions and would never put a product on the market without thorough investigation done beforehand. She hired a team specifically to do research on the product. She thoroughly investigated all the possible risks, and from these results developed a clear and accurate warning for the product. This warning, or Exhibit 1 in this case, states to, quote, utilize protective equipment that covers exposed skin. It also reads, quote, use of a respirator or N95 face mask is recommended. There was no reason to put a warning for cancer on the package, so just because the warning does not include cancer does not mean it should be taken any less serious. Next, you heard from Skylar Weirs, Dakota's own sister, who has done exhaustive research on Drufo. As an expert, she knows more than enough information on how Drufo affects different people in different situations, and in this specific situation, her expert opinion is that there's no danger in using Lush Fertilizer. Lastly, you heard from Dr. Devin Williams, an accomplished toxicologist who has studied Drufo and the effects of it. She told you how it is good for the environment and shows us Ms. Doncourt's pure intentions and environmental concerns were the reason for the creation of Drufo in the first place. Most importantly, she stated how Drufo did not cause the cancer, in her expert opinion. First, you heard from Dr. Casey Rogers in cross-examination, who supposedly conducted an experiment to test how harmful Drufo can be, but none of it was recorded or entered into evidence. It connected the idea of a higher risk of cancer with farmers who worked with other fertilizers more than it did with actual Drufo or even Lush Fertilizer. This means it is inconclusive that it is purely Lush's fertilizer that can be harmful and fails to rule out other fertilizers. Expert or not, she identified the easiest way to contract non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is to breathe in harmful chemicals or to absorb them through one's skin. Both activities done by the plaintiff, in this case, very often, specifically 10 hours a day, every day for 4 summers. Despite all this work with a plethora of different fertilizers and pesticides, Dakota Weirs made the decision to not follow any of the safety precautions, specifically and clearly listed on the back of the fertilizer packaging. In our cross-examination next, you heard from Durst, As a former employee, they were subject to a non-compete agreement by Lush Fertilizer. They signed the contract at the start of their career at Lush, but found it unimportant and violated this agreement when they went to work for the competing company Terra's Greenery immediately after being fired. Carson Durst betrayed their own old friends. Blake Doncourt and her family provided for them and welcomed them into her family when they were in need, not because she was obligated to, but because she cared. Carson Durst repaid this generosity with betrayal. This is not all, though. Ms. Durst produced an email supposedly sent to Ms. Doncourt about Drufo being harmful and argued that she did nothing about it. Blake Doncourt herself, however, testified that she had never seen the email before the trial. And not only did she not recall it, but some lawyers searched Lush Fertilizer's email database before this trial and found no evidence of it ever having been sent or received by the company. Dakota Weirs pleaded her case of Lush lacking accountability and neglecting a warning on the bag of its fertilizer. The real truth behind this is that Lush has a warning, but not for cancer. There's no substantial proof of the risk of cancer deriving from the fertilizer. She used multiple chemical fertilizers every day for years of her teenage life and never used a mask, never covered her skin, and never followed the safety precautions set for her, then blamed it all on the company Lush Fertilizer. The plaintiff argues that it was the defense's negligence that caused us to be here in court today, but Ms. Weirs may not be fully responsible. It also falls on the shoulders of the group that is not here in court today, the company Haven Landscaping. Once again, and for the last time, Lush's warnings were thrown to the wind. Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome. Any limited rebuttal from plaintiff?
Your Honor, I do not believe I have any remaining time left over. I think there's like 1 second left or something, so I will yield my time.
Thank you, everyone. I'm not sure how the scoring process works if it's done confidentially, but I'm happy to turn this over to someone from the CBA. Comments for the participants did an amazing job. Everyone was good in their speech, good with their strategy. I commend you all, and I hope you had as much fun this year as I did back in 1991 and 1992, 93, a long time ago in Maryland. Both teams have awesome hair. I only hope that you still have as much hair when you pass the bar exam after law school. Many people won't, but this is a fun, for me, an exciting activity for high schoolers. I hope it encourages you to, if you have the ambition to be a lawyer, to go pursue it, and I'm sure you'll all do very well. So I'm happy to turn this over to someone from CBA, or I think eventually we might have the scoring judges share a few of their impressions with the students.
Scoring panelists, have you all submitted your scores? Are we waiting on anyone?
I've submitted my scores.
Okay, give me 1 moment, please, and I'll be right back.
Yeah, I think we're ready to go.
Okay, we can proceed with feedback when you're ready.
Judge O'Connell?
Okay, thank you. I thought everyone was very well prepared and did a great job. I'll be super brief. I'm a trial attorney. I do this all the time. And I'm sure you hear this all the time, but there are not a lot of other attorneys that are as prepared as you guys. So great job. Witness Rogers, you were very quiet, so make sure that we can hear you next time around. Yeah, you're very, very quiet. I had a lot of trouble hearing you, but you did a great job. With your cross-examinations, either elevate your voice at the end so it does come across as a question, because in the real world, you may get called on that, or add a right, correct, didn't you, something like that at the end. Witnesses, you guys all really knew your stuff so well. I was really impressed by that. Make sure that you leave the arguing to your attorneys. Don't argue back with the lawyer. Just keep your facts and let the lawyers handle any contention. You'll lose credibility as a witness if you do the arguing back and forth. Lawyers, you guys seem to, within your roles that you have in your world, you seem to know them pretty well. Continue to brush up on those so that you can just spout them off. I think you guys are really doing a great job with that. Don't feel like you get points for every objection, though. Don't object if you don't need to. It's not like touchdowns or baskets. You don't get a point because you've objected. You get a point when you've objected well, or you get credit for objecting well. But if there's not a good objection, don't worry about it. Just let it go. But great job, guys.
Okay, I can give some feedback. Hi, my name is Julia Fenn. I'm a current college mock trial competitor. I go to Colorado College, so if any of you want to continue this in college, please come to our school. Please join our team. We would love to have you. Just some very brief notes in general. First off, I think both teams could benefit from speaking up and slowing down. There were a couple of times when I know you guys have short time periods, but the words were flying a mile a minute. And so I was like, okay, Dakota, Skylar, they said this, twins. And so it took me a little bit longer, I think, to process, especially with experts. You really want to break it down and go slowly. I thought the defense did a very, very good job on their cross-examination of having little bite-sized questions for cross. I think prosecution struggled with that a little bit. Pros, I will say your witnesses did a really good job of kind of coming to life as characters and being a little bit more pulled away from their screen and able to back up the facts that they were going to be pushed on cross. One thing I did want to point out, because this is both a witness point and a lawyer point, that cross-examination of Dakota Weirs. I think on both points, this is something I see all the time at the college level. The witness kind of pushes back a little, and then the lawyer pushes back, and then the witness pushes back, and then the lawyer pushes back, and then we're up to here. And so sometimes the hardest thing to do, I've been both a witness and a lawyer, is you have to remind yourself, like, I'm calm and I'm nice. I had a witness once say, oh, I think the defendant murdered this person. And I had to be like, excellent. Okay, well, let's look at your affidavit. Let's look at exactly what you said here. It doesn't seem to say that. And so it's sometimes when a witness says something or when a lawyer asks you something crazy, just keeping that kind of demeanor of, I'll push back on certain questions, but I'm going to stay calm overall. But overall, really excellent work, you guys. Good luck at the rest of your tournament.
I'll echo what Judge O'Connell said. I think that objections can help sometimes. And my experience as a trial lawyer was a public defender. So I felt when I went into criminal court that, some people might have different assumptions of what guilt would be there, but when it came to the jury, if it was a jury trial, I would hold back on objections because I don't want the jury to think I'm afraid of the information of the testimony. Whereas if it's a trial with a judge, a bench trial, then you can have pretty much any objection you want because you're not going to offend a juror. You're not going to create any impressions there. And also, you may be preserving the record. You may be keeping something for an appeal, whereas if you don't make an objection, you might be waiving that. So as a defense lawyer, waiving things is kind of scary, but you guys did a great job. My only advice is, positive advice, is that as you get further in your careers, you should be able to ask things in simpler ways and write things in a legal argument in simpler ways. So the more effective, your argument is more effective when you can say it in a concise way, and it's harder for the witness to get out of it or find a way to pick on one word. So I think over time, if you do this, especially with cross-examination, there's a certain skill of being able to listen to the witness and not think about your prepared questions ahead of time and being able to play off that witness. But you guys are all amazing. You'll get to that point where you're doing this in trial. If you go to college mock trial, law schools have moot court and mock trials. And then when you get into the real world, you might be doing practice mock trials with your coworkers before going into court and actually doing it live. So congratulations, everyone. Thank you for your hard work.
Thank you, Judge, and thank you, other judges.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.